tonight's Clickcast. Get comfortable, kick off your shoes. Our broadcast journey, we're here to amuse. Watch this week's our broadcast delight. Dive into discussions, photography insight. Welcome tonight's Clickcast. Welcome tonight's Clickcast.
Why do I photograph? The shutter button is like my reset switch on life. Each photo an opportunity to see the world anew, to see myself anew. An ongoing process of self-discovery. Click by click, each photo a conscious choice to create a world I believe in.
Right. Hi, Matthew. It's lovely to meet you. It's Clickcast discussion that I'm starting and I'm hosting. My name's Gladys. I noticed, Matthew, you do several genres of photography. You've done from street to a little bit of nature, and you also do some poetry. Yeah. Like always, I want to start with the first question that we always start in Clickcast. How did you come about doing all of this, and what's your background?
Okay. So I've not really been photographing for too long. I feel a bit like an imposter sat here because all of you are so experienced and your photographs are amazing. And I've only been photographing for just under 2 years properly. Of course, like everyone, I've been taking photos for pretty much all of my life, but it wasn't until just under 2 years ago that I picked up like a very entry-level DSLR. It was a Canon 6000D, I think. And I was inspired by a very good friend of mine who was an amazing photographer, had been photographing for many years, and has quite a big Instagram presence as well. And we were on holiday in the Canary Islands, and I saw him take photographs, and I looked at the photographs when we got back to the hotel and things, and I saw him editing the photos, and I was like, the whole process just looked really amazing and fun, and also a great way to document the holiday. Or we were with other friends, and we're all like, we can just use his photos, which is what we did, and we created like a photo album based on pretty much he created a photo album using his photographs that I have now as good remembrance for the holiday. And so he was really my inspiration to pick up the camera. And then from there, it was really, I started with YouTube videos, so looking at tutorials, learning about the technical side of photography, all about the exposure triangle, how to get exposure correct, even some of the physics, because I'm interested in lots of different things of the sensors and the history of photography and all of that stuff. And I would just go out. Like, the reason I bought the entry-level DSLR camera was because I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be interested in this. So I was like, let me buy a super cheap camera, see if I like it. And I ended up, within the first month, I was completely addicted. I was out pretty much every day, walking the streets of Edinburgh, taking photographs. I started off taking photographs of like the famous spots in Edinburgh, you know, Venel Viewpoint and other areas. But then I started doing like street photography and taking photographs of people. And I started watching more YouTube videos with street photographers. There are some amazing guys out there. I think probably you'll all know them, like Sean Tucker. He's been a huge inspiration for me. I love his work, but I love even more his philosophy behind photography. I think it's fascinating. But there's others like Roman Fox, Faisal Westcott. All these guys were huge inspirations for me. And yeah, it was a case of like seeing first I think it's just a case of emulating other people's work in a sense, you know, because you can look at photographs and be like, I really like that photograph. Let me see if I can recreate that.
Yeah.
both compositionally, but also like in post-production with trying to get the colors and things right.
Yeah.
And then slowly, I think I started to want to see the world with my own eyes and try and create my own photographs. And I think I'm at that stage now where I'm really trying to, and I think that's where the poetry has come in as well, because I'm trying to carve out, I think, my own space, my own creative space, my own creative voice.
That's fabulous. So you're trying to put a message out there of who you are in some aspects, or how you feel about the situation.
Yeah. Also my experiences as well. So I work in the area of AI and psychiatry. So it's a very, even in my work, it's like a very unique space. And so I learn a lot of interesting things. And even going into the area of AI and psychiatry has come from life experiences that's motivated me to move into this and learn these areas and research in these areas.
Are you a technologist like myself?
Sorry?
Are you a technologist then by trade?
Yeah, so my background's in robotics and AI, yeah.
So how do you feel about the fact that AI is taking over aspects of creativity as a person?
So yeah, this is an interesting topic. So I would say it's not necessarily. I don't know. I would say it's not necessarily taking over. It's taking over certain creative work, perhaps, but I think it leaves open the door for new creative work.
Yeah.
I'll give an example of this. So, a couple of days ago, I was in the Arts College here in Edinburgh, and I was watching a showing of a movie. It was a 1 hour movie that was created, and this is how they put it in the credits, is that this is a collaborative project between the artists and generative AI models. And it was an incredible story, an incredible movie. But what they essentially did was it wasn't a case of just, well, I don't know if you've used any of these AI tools like ChatGPT or image generators.
Use ChatGPT.
Yeah, and it's so clever. It's so cool. But often, like these, let's say an AI image generator, you would just put in some keywords that is fed into and then the model is able to output an image that uses those keywords as its prompt. What the artist did was use a whole load of these prompted images, and they were trying to get some kind of output image that they were after. And so they had to like fine tune the prompts, use the correct kind of prompts. And so it was a very like technical task to do. It's not so easy just because many of the images they weren't interested in using for their project. And so they were using all of these image prompts, then getting all of these images and using those as scenes, and then also feeding those images into a moving image generator that could create moving images based on the still images. And in the story itself, they used ChatGPT to create the story. But again, it wasn't just a case of using ChatGPT in its current form and asking it, hey, I have a basic storyline, please fill out the details. What they did was they took ChatGPT in its current form, and then they retrained it with a particular novel, which I cannot remember which novel they used. By retraining the model with this novel, they train the model itself to reproduce output that's going to be more similar to the content that's in this novel.
But the content itself would be from a human, because the content can't come from anywhere else, because it's not true intelligence. It's not of human intelligence yet. It's of machine intelligence, which is totally different. So it still needs to obtain information from somewhere, which are from humans. And the AI cannot generate emotions. They don't know how to generate emotions. For example, when I asked for it to generate a speech, I had to be very specific was what I wanted it to feel. But even then, it would not cover to any lengths to what I wanted. So I had to take over with my own written words.
Okay.
But I always find it interesting because you do photography and yet you're doing AI, and so many artists feel so concerned with that area of where it's leading to, if it will take over, it will take over human art, human emotions, and be taken over by machinery. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But it's interesting anyway.
Yeah. Oh, of course, I'm going to be biased because I come at it from an AI side, and I think AI is purely
A
human.
tool.
What's been created is a tool for sure, but everything that goes into train the models is human created
It
content.
is being created. Yeah.
So like every in an image generator, every image that has gone into train that model was created by humans.
But it's not pure intelligence because it's come from humans. The brain is more complex than what we have with AI. Do you know what I mean?
AI can do things that AI can perform certain tasks better than humans can perform.
Yeah, like pattern matching and calculations. It will do better, but you don't need. That's a different type of intelligence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So maybe you're referring more to something like emotional intelligence, where we have the ability to kind of empathize and understand one another's internal.
Is to empathize.
Yeah.
Right. Regenerate. And machinery can't do that, which I find strange because a lot of humans, a lot of well-known artists are worried that their work will be taken over when they put so much time and effort to express themselves emotionally, to actually put themselves out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think also, I can tell you, I know where you're coming from, Matthew, because I know a person on Vero that I follow, and they're a woodland photographer. But when they use AI, that they use a basis of their own image as a thing, but what they produce, you just use an AI to regenerate something that they see we've been in the woodland. When I first looked at it, I thought, this is amazing. Look at all this. I knew it was AI, but, when I started chatting to them, it was quite incredible. They were open about it, saying it was AI and AI generated, but in the early days, but what they were just doing was just to show the power of AI from a photographer's point of view, that you could generate something. But just touching on what Gladys said, what I said to them, how does it feel generating this image behind a computer, not being out, hearing the sounds, smelling the smells, seeing the foliage, seeing the leaves, or the wind in the trees, and so there is that bit. That's the human bit that you're talking about, Gladys. I think that personally, for me, where I stand, even if AI takes over the world, and as long as I can still go out and take photos with my camera, for me, that's the important thing. That's what it all should be all about. It's that maybe people who rely on that as an industry, then it could be, I can understand their concerns, because it is a contentious issue just now. And even in some some major competitions, the AI, there's people put stuff in, judges have voted it to win the prize, and the actual artist, the photographer, later on came back and said, do you know this is an AI image? And obviously, he wouldn't accept the prize because and it was just to prove a point that that's how intelligent it can be, that it's very difficult for people to tell, what is and what isn't, if it's used in the right manner.
Yeah.
And so there's the ethics part as well. For example, there's been a lot of artist work that's been used and they haven't been paid for the work that they've created. It's taken years to develop to that level. And the same AI model's taken their style and generated something. And I always believe if you're going to do that, you have to pay the artist. Because, like, for example, Grimes is a prime example. She made, actually, it was interesting, her story was she made money out of a song that was using AI. Yeah. So she used it as a way to show that you can make money using AI within your art.
Yeah.
But I do think that if an artist's piece of work is to be used, they should be acknowledged,
Yeah.
ethically.
No, totally, yeah.
But they're in a way. That's what I find unfair.
I just wanted to ask Matthew about in your perspective, how do you think AI and a traditional photographer, like a photographer, can how they coexist in a sense without they, because like what Gladys had said, and of course Brian has alluded to as well, that there are certain aspects of photography that certainly can be enhanced using AI, and also there are certain things that people do, because I think it's a fine line between art and the different genre of arts. So what I wanted to ask is that where do you think AI and the traditional photography skills can actually coexist and align with each other and interact with each other without having the push and pull of the how do you call this? I think I wouldn't say it as insecurity, but it's more of some kind of a threat that AI, some people perceive AI poses to the traditional photography.
Yeah. So firstly, I think I would agree with everything that you've both said, Gladys and Brian, and particularly Brian, about the sense that a lot of photography is more about going out there into the world and experiencing the world, being within the world and the environment, and capturing perhaps as beautifully as you can that experience, and then sharing that experience and using that to connect with others. And I think that's so important. And I think there should always be a place for that. And I believe there always will be a place for that. And perhaps that's a place where you will still see, even in a world that's full of AI, there will still be the need for that kind of connection through some authentic form of photography. Because there's no, if you're just someone who sat in your room all the time producing images from an image generator and sharing that, there's absolutely no prior experience. There's no story at all behind that. And if you share that with someone, in what sense are you connecting with that person? There's no connection there.
So would you think there's a place for both?
So I would say there's definitely a place for both. It really depends on what kind of story you want to tell. So already in big blockbuster movies, they're using loads of AI to do all sorts, and in video games and all of these mediums, AI is being used, and it helps tell a story. No one is pretending that this is authentic, real imagery. We all understand that this is computer generated, and I think that's the place for the space of photography and AI, is to tell stories.
So you say like digital art. AI would be more useful for digital art if you want to create art through digital format, but you'd still need the human side aspects as well. So I suppose it's a bit like having handmade products.
Yeah.
Where it's been managed by big companies.
Matthew, just another question to you, because maybe this is what I'd like to ask you, because clearly you've told us that's your area, what you are working in, in your day-to-day job. Was that the real reason that you coupled with what you spoke about earlier about getting into photography? But did you find photography is a good way to take you away from what you're doing in your job, to actually get out and into reality and using the camera to tell stories without the AI, or whatever you're doing in your day job, whatever that entails? You mentioned it has got AI all in it, but is that what you look for in your photography, your storytelling, to actually be out in the world that you just said there, to actually deal with a real event, real people, real emotions, and real things that you see and hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So photography is a huge part of it for me, is going out into the world and seeing what the world is like and seeing people, and even through it interacting with people. That is a huge part of the process of photography. So another part of, like, a large part of my work that I've been involved in is looking at how our perception of the world is created through the interaction of our sensory inputs. So what we see, what we hear, what we feel, taste, etc. And our kind of what we would call a prior model of what we think the world is like, which a lot of it is and so photography for me is also like a way for me to access, control, and even change the sensory input that I receive, right? So going out to a new place, a new city, country, new nature sites, wherever, you're actually changing the sensory experiences that you're receiving. And by changing the sensory experiences that you're receiving, you're also going to be able to change your perception of how you see the world. And I feel that it can have dramatic impacts on your mood, your mental health, your lifestyle, your general enjoyment and well-being in life. So that's also a huge reason for doing photography.
The other thing, can I go further than that, asking, do you think that a lot of the issues we have in this world is because we rely too much on the internet, on images that we don't know is real or not, that can manipulate people's emotions?
Yeah, so maybe as an example, perhaps we could give is the sense of, photoshopping what you would look like, posting that on social media, and then that setting the standard of beauty and what we should, our appearance and things. And of course, in reality, nobody looks like that. And so our perception of beauty and the beauty standards are completely warped. And I mean, that could get worse as well as we move further away from reality.
But that's why I love street photography, because you see people what they are.
Yeah.
You don't see this beauty standard of perfection or what we think is perfect.
But Gladys, that only comes from actually doing street photography. So I can see that a lot of street photographers enjoy that. But if you go into the wider world and like the general public, I think they find it maybe a bit harder to connect. I don't know. I've not, but maybe they find it a bit harder to connect with the work of street photographers because they don't understand the nuances of, their expectations of what they see online, which is like hyper polished content. And what you're giving as a street photographer is the real deal of what people look like. And people don't necessarily want that, because
we train our brains badly, because the reason why we have so many psychology issues with youngsters is because we have this warped imagery that's impossible to meet.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And I don't know any kind of solution to that.
Yeah.
If we, I just wanted to ask, because like what you said, you've just started actually 2 years in photography, and you find you really enjoy it. So, if I ask you to look forward a year or 2 or 5 years from now, where do you think your journey as a photographer is going to be? And given your skills at the moment with robotics and all other things, AI and the technical side of things, how would where do you see yourself in terms of your progress and maturity as a photographer? And at the same time, where do you see the other skills coming into the photography arena?
So I don't entirely know. I think for now and for a lot of past 2 years, it's very much been about helping myself in a way, helping me understand myself, understand the world. As I mentioned, like changing or helping to alter my perception in a way that I can see the world more brightly, I guess. But I have started recently to ask myself where I want to take this. And there's, I don't know if you know him, he's called Gordon Banks, but he's a photographer and poet. And he has some really nice work where in his photography, he kind of overlays watercolor paintings and creates these really nice abstract. So it's a mix of photography with painting, watercolor painting. And then he has poems that, I guess, in some way inspired by the imagery or add to the imagery, and both of them together tell a story. And I can see, in a sense, me wanting to perhaps do something similar, but instead of overlaying watercolor paintings, for instance, I think maybe adding in using my skills with the computer and adding some more abstract effects through AI modeling or something like that. And then also including the poetry as well and telling a story in that sense.
I mean, it's just, I think you obviously, what you've touched on a few things, Matthew, and, you talked about other people's influences, but is this how you see your photography going? And because, I mean, I think with the poetry, the words that you use are very resonate with me in a couple of examples that I'm going to give one later. But also, and I've seen recently that you're actually, I think you've maybe just bought some equipment, but you're actually now singing and playing some music on some of your more recent Instagram posts. So, I mean, is the music a fairly new thing, or is that something you've just picked up just to add to, this what you're now doing is your style and what you're trying to show the viewers and the people who follow you?
So the music is for pure enjoyment. I've been on and off with music for many years. I started playing the guitar when I was in secondary school, and at the time, I was in like a small band with some friends.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah. We didn't do much though. We didn't make it big. And then once I got to university, I kind of stopped playing, and I haven't played much for the last 10 years maybe. But I've just recently picked it up again.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to be incorporated into my photography work or my poetry, but it's just something I keep it in my stories. It's just something I do for fun on the side.
Okay. That's just interesting.
I know it's cliche, but you saved me. You gave me new eyes during a period of life that left me blind. You found a side to me I'd forgotten existed, one that was lost in the chaotic lifestyle I mixed with, and one for which I can be proud. You pointed out my bad habits with compassion, allowing me to improve, change, and reshape them. And for these, I will be forever grateful. So, what I wanted to say is, thank you. So much.
Well, Matthew, how did you come about that? And how did your poetry come around?
Yeah. So with regards to that video, so that came during a period of time where I was struggling immensely with my own mental health. It was just following a period where I lost my best mate to suicide, and it left me in a quite dark place, I think, mentally. But there was one friend who was just an immense support during that time, and they helped me, because when you're in a very dark place mentally, again, back to the idea of perception, it changes how you see the world, and you're able to see the world in a positive sense, regardless of what people tell you, or even if the world around you is absolutely amazing. If you're in a state of depression, you just can't see it. And even in research, this has been shown, like, your perception of color changes according to your mood. So if you're in a very depressed state, colors around you are almost desaturated. There's less color around in the world for you to actually perceive. And during that time, I had a friend who, like, helped me see that because, again, losing a good friend to suicide, you go through all of these questions of, like, what did I do wrong? Am I a bad friend? Did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? Should I have gone to see them when they were in the last moment before they died, because I knew they were struggling? So it questions entirely what you think of yourself as a person, as an individual, and as a friend. And I told this to a friend, and he showed me that firstly, of course, it's never anybody's fault when these things happen, regardless of how you feel about it. But he made me see that, and because he was such an amazing friend to me in that moment, I think it helped me see that in the end, maybe I am a good friend, because if I have a friend that is this amazing towards me and is this supportive towards me, and usually our friends reflect who we are as people, maybe I am a good friend and maybe I am supportive as well. And he helped me see that.
I'm glad.
I think you just made a very good, and that's maybe for other people listening, it's a very good message there. The key thing you done is you took it upon yourself to speak out and ask people and get support from people, because that's when, if you don't do that, it can get very deep and dark. I mean, and I know what you're talking about, because at one time in my past, I had a bit of a dark time where, and at the time, I look on it now and I can see it in the images I was producing in the woods that were deep, moody, dark. And when I look back at them, I remember that time, but I'm in a different place now. But I can resonate exactly what you're saying there, Matthew. But the good thing is that that's an important message, that we do speak out. Or if anybody sees anybody like yourself or in a place like that, that they approach people and speak to people and ask how they're doing, and is there anything you want to talk about? That's the important message, I think. And I'm sorry to hear about your friend, but you can it's.
I'm sorry to hear about your friend too. And the thing is, like, I'll just say that I've had experience from losing friends. From my husband, he's lost a few to suicide through his friends, and you find that there's nothing you could do.
Yeah.
There's nothing. You can be the best friend in the world, but they have to get themselves out of it somehow.
Yeah.
And that's so heartbreaking. But
Yeah.
and you have to appreciate everything in life, even the most smallest things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think seeing the video, it and your explanation of the background on creating it, and what I would say is that it does give that message, that it tells a story. I actually looking at it, even without the background that you just heard, it creates that emotional, why and how, and it's really there is that message of wanting to know more on the why of the image. And one thing I wanted to just say, because it seems to me that and your photography, the art that you create, is very much based on your emotions, how you want to communicate those emotions, and to communicate the story behind the images as well. So when you create the those images and the videos, do you find it cathartic, the whole process, and does it actually is it something that you would um for photographers as well, that just wanted to show images just because this is what's expected? Do you think, would you say to them that it's good to share out and tell your story and tell the background, because it becomes more engaging?
I think so. And also this goes way back to what we were talking about originally about some human connection and using art to connect with one another. And when you do if you're just putting out work just so you can keep a following or keep people's engagement, where's the true connection in that? You may as well just create AI images and do the same thing. But if you're telling a story and you're saying, I think this is how I felt, and not just in the negative sense, but also in the positive sense. If you're out in the beautiful countryside and you're experiencing the tranquility and the calmness, you want to connect that feeling to other people as well, the people to kind of feel that way. And certainly I feel that way when I look at the photographs of, Brian or Paul, those amazing, gorgeous landscapes. You feel the sense of calmness, and that's what you're communicating. And if you don't have that sense of authenticity and story behind the art, I think people eventually realize it. I don't know.
I did message you, Matthew, because of some of the poetry and the words, and I'm just keen to explain. You asked the question here so that the listeners can hear in. I mean, clearly, I did ask you to say, some of the words and the things. It's like any artist or musician; they're all from some form or level of personal experience or something in their life, and if you wouldn't mind just explaining to everyone, some of because you've put out I've read quite a lot of them now, and and to me there's an experience there. Maybe not in them all, but but would you mind just answering? How do you, how much of them contain real life experiences like the tragedy one you've just given us, but how many of them actually resonate from an actual physical experience, or it could be a known experience from a friend or a colleague, or end in your family? Is that generally where you get these type of emotions through your photography that are linked into your photos and your posts?
Yeah, so almost all of them do come from life experiences. I may change the certain details, but they all ultimately, I've experienced quite a few losses related to mental illness, suicides, not just my close friend, but family as well. And each one on top of the next adds a deeper sense of like grief and pain and emotional stress that I think is what is coming out in my artwork. It's what's coming out in what I photograph or write. And often often the art is never intentional in the sense that it is very emotional, and I cannot control the need to create something. You know, it's not within my, it feels like it's not within my control. I can wake up in a morning and my head is racing, my mind is racing, and my body is itching to go and do something, create something, go out and photograph, sit down and write. That's, you know, so it feels like it comes from outside of me. I'm not having to force this. But ultimately, I think it comes from real life experiences over time. They build up like an emotional, I don't know, it fills up your emotional balloon in a sense. And I need to keep on releasing it. It continuously builds, and I need to release it over and over again.
Can I just say for sharing?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I can feel that when I read them. Honestly, I can. And
Thank you so much.
no, totally.
I just want to say thank you for sharing, because you're sharing very personal feelings and emotions, and that's quite brave thing to do.
Thank you.
It's a privilege that the fact that you actually be so open about how you express yourself creatively. Yeah, I just wanted to say that because I think it's really important to highlight that, really.
Yeah, and I guess also, of course, I'm not the only one that's going through difficult life experiences. We all really, at some time or another in our life, are going to really struggle.
Yes.
And I think when we are open about it, we give space and allow others to be open as well.
Yes.
And I think it's so important.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wanted to talk about photo too. Was it the Ghost Girl? Because I noticed you did quite a few long exposure photos as well. And is that something you enjoy doing, long exposures, and how did that come about?
Yeah, I love long exposure. I think the sense of difference in perception that it adds compared to like a snapshot. The long exposure, our eyes never see the world in long exposure like that, and so I love how it really warps your sense of seeing the world. And so I'm drawn to long exposure in that sense. And then the Ghost Girl image, again, because a lot of my images come from experiences, and that one was an experience of quite a modern phenomenon of being ghosted by someone. So,
Oh my God. I love that. Okay.
yeah. And
we've got that photo. Sorry, we've got that photo to come up. Let's see it. Just so can...
Photo two, Paul. Photo two.
Here we go.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is the photo I absolutely love, Matthew, of the ghost girl. And you're saying it's about being ghosted. Could you go further about this?
yeah. So if you know the phenomenon of being ghosted, it's where you will be in contact with someone for quite a while, and you'll build up a connection, an emotional connection, and then suddenly they'll completely disappear from your life. And it's easier to do this now through online communication systems. And when that happens, when I look at this image, I can see almost like a fragment of the person is now a fragment of my imagination. And at one point they were a real person to me, and now they are again somewhat warped. I see them, but I don't see them, kind of thing, you know? And they're slowly, when I look at her in the image, for instance, I see that she's slowly disappearing. And even with the train being there, I can sense that she's about to leave, you know, and I'm never going to see her again.
That's so clever. I love
so
that.
that's what, yeah.
Was that, I mean, obviously, did you take that image to try and help you to with what happened there, or was that just an image you took and then you made that connection with this ghosting thing?
I just made the connection. So I will take lots of images, and then based on feelings and experiences, I'll connect them up with my images often.
Okay, and then just on the technicality side of this, was this just what's like shutter speed? Do you remember, or was it intentional movement, moving the camera at the time?
It would have been around, because I used a Ricoh GR3, and I tend to set it at around 1 to 2 seconds exposure time.
Okay.
And it has pretty good image stabilization, so I can usually get decent stills whilst keeping the let's say 1 second. And if I remember rightly, I was actually intending to get a shot where someone was stood still whilst the train was moving. So there'd be a still person with a moving train behind them, but she just turned around at the right moments to create this like nice side portrait. And so it created this effect.
But that's just touching on what you've said, isn't it? Sometimes, I've had experiences, not the ghosting, but when you're maybe taking something, you're trying to be creative with long exposure in street photography, and when you see the back of the screen, you're like, wow, that's, it's like a different, like you say, your eye can't see it like a normal still, but it's quite a moment, isn't it? And you get, it gives you a nice feeling inside when you see it, I guess.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that there's a reflective aspect to photography as well, where again, you're not necessarily going in with a particular intention, but then you'll take the photo and you'll look at it afterwards, and then you'll be like, oh, this, I wasn't expecting this, but it's really awesome. Or you might connect it to some other emotion or a story or something.
I mean, to me, looking at this image, to me, I'm seeing an older style platform and train. It's like one of the old-fashioned coach trains moving fast, and the way she's moving, it's a girl with a long old-fashioned gown you used to wear in the Victorian times. That's what I'm seeing there.
That's interesting. Yeah. This was in Berlin, actually.
I just love the fact you use the concept of making it look like, a fragment of your imagination. Because she was once there, but she's no longer there. So the illusion of her exists, but it's not physically there. It's just a spiritual illusion of fragment of memory that's been left behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I think what I would like to do, if you're okay, Matthew, I'd like to just read out the poem that you wrote to accompany this post, because this is the one that really struck a chord with me. Not every single word or phrase, but there's a lot of them that actually, and I've got that written down now to, because you've made an impact on me with that. I have to say that's made an impact on me. So I'm just going to read it out, and then we can maybe let you explain, what's behind that. And another thing I'd like to say, that I've noticed a theme that appears in a lot of your images you post. Again, it's quite creative. You introduce a lot of out of focus elements into some of your photography, which that's very clever, I think. And, we'll talk about that later, but I can see that as a theme coming through a lot of your posts. It adds a little bit of a creativity to it. So basically, you're saying it's not always so easy. It really can be hard sometimes. It can feel painful, confusing, overwhelming, hopelessness. But please don't give up. There are experiences waiting for you, ones that you could never have imagined experiencing. There are new perspectives to be witnessed, ones you could never have imagined perceiving. There are new people you will meet who you could never imagined loving. And they could change everything. So please hang in there. Now, I thought that's, and I think that was after I read that particular poem, that's when I contacted you, because I thought this is good. This meant something to me and what I've had going on with me. And I thought, and you came back and you told me that, yes, this has got meaning. So I just felt that to me, that should made a connection with me as an individual. And I can see how you'll get a lot of people connecting with you through what you're doing, because there's something there. And which way to interpret that, or how we ever, whatever we've got, and all different experiences with one thing or another. And that certainly connected with me. And but I'd like to understand from your point what led to that particular poem and those selection of images that you put the words along with.
Sure. Well, thank you, Brian. That really means a lot. Honestly, thank you so much.
Not at all.
So it came from my own personal experience of a time when I was in a very deep state of depression, and I couldn't see. Again, as I was explaining, when you're in a state of depression, you just cannot see beyond the immediacy of the negative worldview that you have. But I came out of that through numerous areas of help, but also a lot of self-study and reflection and things. And when I reflect on that period and I reflect on how I've come out of it and how my own worldview has changed, all of the words that are in there, it's like I'm telling myself those things when I was back in a state of depression. And I'm telling myself, look, this is maybe how you see the world now. It might seem hopeless. And you might feel lonely and things like this, but give it time because things can change. They have changed. And it's kind of a message that I want other people to hear, because if people are also in that kind of state of depression where they feel that there's no hope, I really, as strongly as I can, want to get the message across that you can perceive and see the world in a different way. It's possible. And just to hold on, and new people will come into your life. We do lose people in our lives, and it's incredibly upsetting and hard when that happens. And it can feel like nobody will be able to replace that person. But we don't need them to be replaced. They'll still be within us, but new people will come into our lives and they will show us something different, and they'll give us new experiences. And they will mean just as much to us as people that have left our lives. That's the message, and that's the background behind it.
No, I mean, just to explain further from my point, because basically, I was in a not very nice relationship a number of years ago, and we had a break, and I cycled around Scotland just to clear my mind and reset. Anyway, what happened? We got back together. It wasn't the right thing. And we moved on. I've had other rocky things between now and then. I lost confidence in women, to be quite honest, because the way that it was. But anyhow, on the way driving up, I was going up to a trial workshop with Kim Grant, a photographer that I've followed for a long time, and we interviewed here just a couple of weeks or so ago on the Clipcast. But actually, on the day going up, because of the weather and the storm we had to take a diversion. And that diversion, not aware of it at the time, took me on a section of the route that I cycled. And at that point, my memory flashed back to where I was that time, where I've come to. Photography, I'm like you, I'm only fairly new in this type of photography since COVID. But, it became overwhelming. I had to stop driving because I thought, look where I was then, look where I am now, and look where my future is. And it was very emotional. I actually had to stop driving. It was so powerful. Yeah. And it was just the timing of it. And then when I read this poem of yours, there's other elements in it, but that's just one element I want to share that, and it just shows you, I was in a bad place myself, with this, what had happened in my previous relationship. And it took me a while to get over it and talking to people. But when I sat back now and never even thought about it, it was just, I was driving on that road and suddenly my mind clicked in. I thought, crikey, the last time I was on this road was when I cycled around Scotland, and look at where I was then and what allowed to happen to my life, and look where I am now. So it's right, and it's a good message because I can certainly, I'm evidence of it happening to me, and and that's when I read some of these words. There's elements in it that just hit me strong in my heart. It was powerful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. It is incredible when, as you say, you would have looked back and reflected that time of being on the same road was the trigger to help you remember a previous period of time and then compare that to and you can see how you've changed. And
correct. Yeah. Oh no, I still honestly now I do a lot of mindfulness, that I've been learning recently as well, and it helps just to keep things, because now my life is good just now. My life is good, but you've got to sometimes remember the things that weren't so good, and plan for the future. And again, I've fairly recently I've broken up with my girlfriend, and again that was a tough thing, because that's another bits in this, but these are all the things, and just what you say, hang in there. And, that's what I'm thinking. I will get it. I'll hang in there. I'll be fine, but, very powerful words, young man, very powerful words.
I think also it would be nice as a woman to see men's true emotions, how they really feel, because we live in a society where some men don't really show their emotions that easily. And actually seeing you, Matthew and Brian, sharing how you truly feel and your sensitive side it's lovely.
Yeah, thank you. It's very true. I think there is. I was talking to a psychiatrist not long ago, and she was mentioning the fact that men seem to have worse mental health outcomes than women, and the reason she thinks that is because women are much more likely to not only express how they're feeling, but to go and get help. That can be help from speaking to friends, but it can also be professional help. Men are much less likely to do that. They're more likely to either hide it, mask it, use alcohol, drugs to numb it, rather than express it and go and get some help. And I think what we're kind of coming to what in the field of like psychology, they're coming to realize is that men and women feel just as much in terms of emotions. It's just a difference in how those emotions are expressed. That's, I think, where the difference comes.
I agree. And I also think, like, something with my husband, I say my husband's more maternal than I am, with the children.
Yeah.
We have this concept that women are the nurturer, but actually men can be very much the nurturer, even more in some aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just sorry, I thought, listening to the discussion really, and you, the way you expressed the story behind the images and the art and the poem that you create, and I just thought that I see that it is both therapeutic for yourself, and at the same time celebrating those experiences, whether they might be painful, they might be a happy experience, it might be life changing, or cathartic type of experiences. But the way I listening to you and seeing the images actually that you produce, it is a communication. So it's communicating all those emotions, those learnings, communicating your journey. And I think that is quite powerful. And not many people, because when we communicate that way, we're opening ourselves. We're being vulnerable. So that vulnerability and actually putting it out to the public, likes of Instagram and things like that. Not many people could do that, and I think that is quite powerful. And my question really is: do you see yourself continuing doing that? Because I think you come. I'll come back to the point you make as well previously, where you said that the difference between actually telling a story and creating art and communicating that art, the story, the emotions, everything behind it, versus the just create it because you have to create it because you have a deadline, or you have your contents, you need to put out contents because you're afraid that all your followers will go away. So it's the way I see it is you're actually putting things out there because you want to put it out rather than for likes and for, acknowledgements and all that stuff. Do you think that would continue to be the journey that you will be taking?
Yes, absolutely. And I guess I am very lucky to have quite a stable job as a researcher that doesn't, therefore, I don't have to rely on making money from my art, for instance, which I think would be very, very hard to do. And so my artistic side, I feel a total freedom. And I don't worry about having followers or any of those metrics. Those are not important to me. It's always about connection. And I would much rather have a very small handful of people, but with whom I very deeply connect with, than having a huge audience. And I'm creating content on a schedule in order to keep people's engagement and keep the numbers growing. But what kind of connection is that? That doesn't interest me at all. And so I would want to continue doing what I'm doing. And already it's really surprised me just how incredible the new connections are that I've made. And I've been so touched from what you've all said, and Brian, for you bringing up my poem and mentioning how it resonated with you. These are what is so special to me. This is, honestly, I couldn't ask for more than this. It's really been amazing. And this is all I need. But even just personally, even if there was no one else looking at my content, just the very act of externalizing my internal world and putting it into words and putting it into imagery, even that is just of itself beneficial for me. Mm-hmm. It's therapeutic. Yeah. So I can't see why I would stop doing this.
That's good because, like I said, your content is unique and it has that ability to actually, grab the attention of the audience, and it's. I think that's where sometimes when I look at some of the people that I follow previously, and I see that along the way they become less true to themselves as they go along, because especially with fame and with likes and all those things, sometimes it creates that pressure. So for me, I would be looking forward to seeing more contents from you and seeing how you develop as well, because like what you said, things were defined by the experiences that we have and the interaction we have with people, and you're very brave to even say, like, being ghosted and all those kind of things, and those are real, and it resonates with people. And I think as you stay true to yourself and create art and continue to develop it, but with that heart behind it, that will always be something that is uniquely you and sets you apart from others. So don't lose it.
I think the reason why I did select you, Matthew, is because you come across very authentic. Mm-hmm. It's just honest. And it's full of integrity. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, because I just found that fascinating, because so many people are scared to be that honest, and show their vulnerabilities. And I think that's amazing. That is an actual power. Use that power gift. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, thank you.
This world needs it, because we live in such a mixed up world now.
Yeah, it's so difficult to be vulnerable, not just because you have to open yourself up to judgment, and you are going to show people that you're imperfect, inevitably so. We are all imperfect. Open yourself up, you're going to show people your imperfections. But it's also the only way that I think we can connect with one another. Because if we're not, then we're only connecting on superficial superficial traits, kind of,
I think people get to do that because they tend to play a mask, because they feel they have to play a mask.
It will be the case that when you are vulnerable, a lot of people also don't like vulnerability, and particularly if others don't like to be vulnerable themselves, I think they'll find it even harder to accept someone else's vulnerability. But from my own personal view, I don't really care too much about other people's perception of me. I don't want to offend or upset anyone, of course. I care about how people feel, but I'm not going to be inauthentic in order to get people's approval. I can't see the value in doing that.
Yeah, that's a power gift. Know that, an actual gift to have.
I don't know where it comes from. Maybe spending so much time talking to therapists, they've helped me find a way of voicing and communicating my internal world.
And use that as a gift. Use that gift. Because that is very powerful.
Was that I know fairly recently as well, you've actually been putting in pictures of yourself in some of your most recent posts as well. And was that a conscious decision to let people get to connect with the Matthew, the guy behind? Because that's another thing, we all, most of us, if we look, tend to post photographs, but none of them really show the photographer or the person behind that lens. Was that a conscious decision you've just made recently, Matthew, that you've been thinking about?
So I've only really posted two photos of myself.
Yeah.
And one of them is very blurry. You don't even know, you couldn't even recognize me in it. As I guess most photographers only show their work and their photography. And there's another side to something like Instagram where people are only posting pictures of themselves, and it's very much all about like, look at me kind of thing. And I wanted to make a conscious effort not to go down that route. So I always want to show people the rest of the world. I'm not interested in showing people me. I want them to see the world. I think the world is way more interesting and fascinating than I am. So that's what I want them to see. But if I have something that is very so like the most recent one I posted of myself is a mirror selfie, but it's blurred. So I use long exposure. So it's very blurred. And that is an expression of, at the time when I took that photo, that was an expression of, I think, a feeling that many of us have when we look in the mirror at ourselves and seeing those imperfections and seeing ourselves and all the ugliness and all the things that we wish we could change. And so that's what that is a reflection of. And most people, when they take a mirror selfie, they'll choose the absolute best, angle and lighting that they can get and then post that. But I wanted to do something different and say, usually when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we see lots of imperfections and a sense of ugliness a lot of the time. And I think that happens to all of us.
Yeah, I think we're talking about, when you mention about vulnerabilities and actually, expressing it out there and showing it, but also not leaving, not, what I would say is that because when we are vulnerable and we share it out there, so we get different reactions from people. And I like the way when you said, I don't really care what the reactions are. This is myself, and this is how I see the world, and this is where I am at the moment. Because and that's really great, because for me, the worst thing that we could do to ourselves is actually try to live up to people's expectation all the time, because we will end up being the most unhappy people. And I think being true to oneself, and also accepting the real person, warts and all, is enriching, and that's what maturity brings, and that's what accepting vulnerability brings. And I think it is very, very rare for someone to be in touch with that, because we, of course, we have we have we live in a world now with very, very high expectations, and it's created expectations. It's not realistic expectations, and trying to actually you know satisfy those isn't gonna be achievable. And it's about, so being in touch and being grounded and able to tell that story, that journey, is quite powerful.
Yeah. And if you can't be authentic to yourself, if you can't accept yourself as you are, you also can't connect with yourself. And I think connecting with yourself comes before everything.
Yeah.
And only once you've connected with yourself can you then find the strength and the ability to connect authentically with others.
Yeah. No, but that's the, I mean, just exactly. I mean, since I've gave up my work in June, I have no expectations of me. I do what I want. I meet what I want, and this is how I've met this community here, was through connections, because I was able to go out and do what I was doing, all through photography, all through connections with one place or the other, and here we are all now in the Clickcast community, speaking to guests or people like yourself, Matthew, and others, and so I think for my own self-being, you're exactly what you've said. I now know in the last 6 months who my inner self is. I've discovered myself in a way that I didn't know existed. I'm 55 years old, and it's the first time I've ever thought myself as a creative person who can basically immerse themselves in nature in the way that I'm not running about, on a Saturday and a Sunday because I was working Monday to Friday. So I'm very, very fortunate to do that. But you're right. That's and that resonates out to our community of people who, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or Vero or any other social media platform, that's where the people make the connection with the work that each of us are putting out there to the people that appreciate what we are doing, experiences we are having, seeing, and sharing with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel, Brian, that this time that you've had off of work, it's given you the space, no longer having to go and do external tasks? And you also said that you've picked up mindfulness as well, which is I think it's a very consolidated, intense form of being able to connect with yourself when you do mindful meditation, for instance. So do you feel like...
Yeah. No, honestly, yeah, because when people say that I feel like wings have taken me up into the sky, that's how it made me feel, because I worked in a sort of lower level management role, managing a team in supply chain, and there was pressures left, right, and centre, and organisational pressures, all that stuff. Yeah. And then suddenly, the day that I wasn't doing that, and then it was about a month down the line, I had another person at my work was leaving, and I met up with the colleagues. And at that time, driving over to Fife was the first time I thought about how I used to work. And 6 weeks it was, or 8 weeks, I can't remember, but I hadn't given it a thought, because that new world of freedom to go where I'll go and do, or just sit in nature, take a flask and a coffee and a sandwich and just sit in a woodland in nature and just immerse. Honestly, it's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing. It still is, and and I just love, I love what I do. I love what I do. I love the messages that I get from the people that follow me, and I love the connections we've made with everybody here. And I'm very fortunate. I planned for it and it happened, and I made it happen. That's the thing. I think that's another message. I made a plan for this to happen, and now I'm executing my plan. And just really, that's all I'm saying. But yeah, that answers your question. I think maybe in a longer way you expected.
No, it's great. It's great. And it is in this fast-paced world to have the ability just to take yourself out to nature and sit by yourself, as you say, with a hot drink and disconnect entirely.
Yeah.
We don't get that enough, I think.
No, and that's what I can see. I can see what you're doing. I want to ask, because again, just fairly recently, I was trying to understand, and this is one of the things I wanted to get out with the workshop we had up in the north with Kim Grant was, we all get emotions when we're out and doing whatever we're doing. Where whatever Gladys is doing, or Janet, your photography, and Matthew, yours. We get a feeling, and I want to understand that emotion and try and make it a tangible feeling. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling that? I wouldn't want to forget that feeling. So that was something else that I'm trying to, it's all about development, our own human personal development. And that's something that's extremely important to me, because I've spent my life in nature outdoors, but as an active athlete, it's kind of running about all over the place, but now it's like slow right down, and it's almost about, slowing down in the mind as well, not physically, but also slowing down in the mind is a great thing that, I could stand up and talk about it, because that's how positive it makes you feel when you actually realise what it gives you.
Yeah.
That's the problem I have, is not being able to slow down my mind. Because even when I had a career break for 8 years, I had to do photography as a way to keep my mind active, because being a person that did, I don't know about you, but when you work in technology, one of the beauty about working in technology is you're always using your brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a puzzle. You're solving this puzzle every day.
Yeah.
Some days you get it, some days you don't. Some days you're frustrated with it because you're thinking, why am I not getting this? Am I being stupid? Other days it suddenly appears, the solution.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose that's the reason why I did went back to work, because I miss the aspects of solving puzzles. It sounds bizarre, doesn't it? I think that's the thing. When you
solve puzzles in photography.
solve puzzles in computing,
Yeah.
working things. So, because even that's quite a creative thing, let alone photography as well.
Yeah.
They sort of go hand in hand, I suppose. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, I was about to say was, that's why I went back to work as well, because I needed the balance of both. I discovered that I could do photography, and I found that as an outlet for my emotions.
Yeah.
Like say, and it grounded me because it gave me opportunity to actually question why I felt the way I do.
Mm-hmm.
But then, working gives me the opportunity to actually, use my brain as well. Sounds bizarre, doesn't it? So a lot of people retire at this stage, and I decided to go back to work because I need to use my brain.
I think the way the sharing and the discussion just came into my mind that I think every person that actually enters photography enters it for some specific reason, which is very, very personal. But then somehow along the way, we do find a community, with each other, a community with each other. And I think that's the beauty of it, of photography, because it isn't only about technical knowing the exposure triangle or things like that, but it resonates with the individual. And also with that, it also opens up opportunity to actually connect to people on a more deeper level. And I think that's one of the things that I take from this discussion, because I always say that my reason for going into photography is just because I wanted to document the things that I see every day, because I wanted to see, when I look back and say, oh, actually, this is a specific experience that happened on that specific day, because no experience, or even photography, you could go to the same place, take exactly the same photos, but when you look at it, there's always the nuances. And I think it kind of reflects on life as well, because we might go through the same experiences, the same wins, the same heartbreaks, the same challenges and things like that, but the experience will always be different.
Yeah.
I think now let's maybe talk about some of Matthew's photographs.
Can I just say one more thing?
Oh yeah.
From what Jan said, I remember reading somewhere about AI, and Matthew may agree with this, that they've proven that the way we perceive the world is slightly different, even with colours. Like we may see red, the same red, but slightly different.
I think that's true. I think we all have a unique perceptual experience of the world. Yeah.
Right, Brian, go on, show the photos. I'm so sorry about this.
Not at all. I think I want to look at image number 6 first of all for me. Of a purple. Yeah, this is it here. Yeah. Now, I'll give you my perception of what I'm seeing. There's somebody sitting, looking at this carving, this ancient carving on a wall, and I'm thinking, what are they thinking? What are they seeing? Where's their mind going? Because my mind does this. How does this created? Who done this? How long ago? How's it been here? And just with that transient light, with the marble, I think it looks like going from the white to that purpley hue there. I mean, first of all, where is it, and what was your attraction to taking this particular image?
It is, I like this image. So this is in Palais des Beaux-Arts in Lille, in France. And so it's an art gallery. And the image that's in the background, well, it's not an actual marble structure. It was a video. It was a projected video that was on the wall. Yeah. And on the video, color was streaming across. I remember different color was streaming across. And I captured this just as the blue color kind of was halfway along. So you can see like the left half is in blue, the right half is not. But it gave this really nice silhouette. And then I took a few photos from different distances, and each distance gave a different level of framing with that small doorway. So I was in a corridor here. And this was my favorite framing of that. And like you, Brian, I look at it and I think, what is she thinking? What is she experiencing as she's looking at the video and thinking? Yeah.
It's lovely. It's lovely. I just love it.
She is like really totally engaged with what she's looking at. And she was, and that's what I wanted to capture.
Yeah. I think the next one, in fact, just in number 7, because it's kind of moving towards a woodland landscape, a snowy scene with a lone figure in it. So this, I don't know, this is amazing. I think this is wonderful. And first of all, I'm curious to know how you've achieved the effect, because I did mention earlier you use some blurry type technique in a lot of your images, and that's clearly snow, but I mean, this is a wonderful image. It's absolutely wonderful. I love it. The colour palette, the contrast, the monotone, the lone figure, that blurry snow. I mean, I want to hear more and more about this image. It's.
So this was taken back when I was at home visiting my family in Sheffield. And this is a golf course that is right next to where my family lives.
Okay.
And this was in February, perhaps earlier this year, and it snowed ridiculously heavily. And I just went out in the thick of the snow to explore the golf course because I knew there would be some gorgeous scenery there.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up finding a vantage point, and there were a few people quite far away from me. I had my zoom lens, I was zoomed right in, maybe like 75 mil or something. And I wanted to get the snowflakes in the shot as well. So I can't remember the shutter speed that I used exactly, but I remember playing around with the shutter speed, taking different shots until I was able to get an image where snowflakes would appear in front of the image like this. And then it was just a case of waiting around for the right moment. And there was this was a young boy, and he was walking down from left to right, as you can see. And then I waited. There's kind of like a point in the trees. If you notice, it kind of points towards the boy in a way.
Yeah.
So I just waited until he reached that point and took a shot.
It looks, you know what it looks like to me? An old film photograph. It's got that texture, that look. It's got, I mean, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, wow, that's got that old, some of these old films I used to photograph on a wee SLR, but it's got a film look to it, which is nice. I think it's got a very authentic look to it, but yeah, I think it's amazing. I love it.
I think I did add a bit of grain in post-production, and then I cooled it down a bit as well, so there's a bit of blue in there to give the cold feeling.
No, it's. I mean, even the shadows under the trees, and the woods and the contrast, and hope you've got that framed up somewhere.
I gave this as a birthday present to my mum, framed.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
Yeah.
It's funny. I know you're from Sheffield, didn't you? But I've spent a lot of time in Sheffield to do with work, and it's not. Well, I don't know. I've only been in the centre. It's maybe not. Can't compare it to Edinburgh. Is all I'm going to say.
No, not at all.
I have family in Bromfield and Sheffield area.
Very nice. Yeah.
I actually saw a long time ago an old film of 1902 of Sheffield, and it actually did look a bit like Edinburgh. So I don't know.
Well, I wasn't there then, Gladys, so I can't comment.
Yeah. Anyway,
Gladys, do you want to pick a photo?
Yeah, I want to pick photo one of Edinburgh.
Oh yeah.
I absolutely adore the lighting in that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful the way you've done that.
Yeah, so this is from Hollywood Park near St. Anthony's Chapel, near those small ruins. And there was a photo that I was planning to get, which was, I knew the sun set behind the monuments of Calton Hill. And my intention was to get a silhouette of the monuments on Calton Hill, which I did get in the end. But before the sun set to that point, I was kind of waiting around, wondering, and I happened across these two young people who were sat and engaged in a conversation, enjoying the sunset as well. And I positioned it so that you can see the sun is in the top right, they're in the bottom left, the monuments are in the center, so there's nice symmetry. And yeah, I also really like the scene. I like the lighting, and again, it evokes a story. Well, at least I do. I ask myself, what are they talking about? What kind of relationship do they have? Are they young lovers with a blooming relationship ahead of them, or yeah?
They're too spaced out for that, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, you know what? I mean, the scene that what really draws me in this image is the way that you've got the highlights catching parts of around about their body, their hair. That to me, that's this. The image, it's a beautiful image, but the way that you've got them sitting in that corner with the light catching on their bodies and their hair, highlighting it. That, to me, that's what makes that foreground pop. That's,
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
I think looking at the body language, they're having a bit of a discussion. That's why I'm interpreting it.
It certainly gives it certainly is a point of discussion. So you look at the photo, you could it invites you to speculate what they're doing and what they're seeing and things like that.
It does. Particularly the boy looks deep in thought.
Indeed. Yeah. Okay. Jan, have you got any images you want to look at?
No, not particularly. I think there's so many to look at, and I haven't decided actually. I think the what I just want to say is that, like what I said earlier, the body of work that you have, Matthew, is quite astonishing. Given that it actually, it's not only about photography. It's about telling a story. It's about sharing your own journey as an artist as well, and also because you have I think you have managed to pull together really, really well a different genre of photography, really, and including video as well, and your own words in it. So your own creativity with regards to the written language as well. So I find that fascinating, and I, like what I said earlier, I would really be looking forward to the contents that you'll put out in the future, because I think you have that that niche point that you manage to actually have. There's thousands of photographers around, and sometimes you say a landscape photographer maybe have 1, 2, 3, or 5 images that or more than that kind of resonates with people, but it is very different to really be able to tell that story and have that emotion on it, and also those vulnerabilities.
Thank you, Janet. That's really, really kind, honestly. And yeah, I don't know what to say. I
tend to be very honest with what I say, because if I see and I don't like it, I would tell. And I think Gladys knows that. But like what I said, you have that unique ability to tell a story, to have the message of both positivity and vulnerability, and that's unique.
Yeah, I just like to echo that. And again, if it hadn't been for Gladys identifying you to come on, the minute I did, I looked at your post, went to your website, had a look, and refreshing is probably the word that came to mind, because I hadn't, and all the people I know through the people I know in accounts, I thought, this guy's interesting. He's got a story to tell. The way that he tells them with the little panel of images, and the way you cleverly put some of the words in the poem throughout the panels, and some ones you've got always like a normal laid out poem, and I just thought this is really engaging and interesting and different and refreshing. So thanks for Gladys for bringing Matthew to my attention, and I'm looking forward to continuing to see what creativity you bring to us in the very near future.
And I agree with everybody, was what everyone say, and it's true. Janet's very honest. If she doesn't like it, she will tell you. But I agree with everybody that it is very unique, and it's a gift, really, to be able to express yourself quite honestly, to be honest.
Thank you. I feel so touched. It's incredible. Thank you so much for inviting me on here. I never expected to be able to have the chance to talk with amazing photographers. But it's fantastic to be able to do so. And I've learned so much Gladys, particularly you were the first person, I think one of the first people on Instagram that I came across.
No.
And your street photography in Edinburgh really was so inspiring. And the way, again, I think you bring authenticity. You brought
Thank you.
authenticity to my feed because you were showing the real view of the streets of Edinburgh, what life is really like. And that's what at least I wanted to see, and I hope that more and more people want that sense of authenticity as well. Rather than, regardless of how much AI I do, I still care about authentic content. And
Yeah.
Amazing, Matthew, and that's a really good message to bring to the whole creative community, is the fact that I don't think photography, I mean, I think that part of photography will sell, and it's not something we should be so scared of, really. There is a space for everybody, really.
I think there will always be a space, yeah.
Yeah.
AI is a tool. It's one of the tools that will enrich photography and the art of photography, and that's how I see it.
Yeah, used appropriately.
Yeah.
We're using it with things like some of the new features in Lightroom, for example. It's AI, but it's not physically making a massive change to what we actually seen and perceived and we're planning to share. It's just little elements, and it's any software in effect AI, isn't it? Because it's it's not a human do. It's not like the old days. I used to be an engineering drawing man, drawing on a board with pencil and paper, but no, it's been wonderful, Matthew. This is the whole ethos of this Clickcast community, to actually just get up and coming people, local people, or more distinguished people, but it's to give people that voice, and that's how I came on it, and Gladys has been on it. We've got Janet and Paul who started it, so it's just to give people like yourself, creators that are, just to hear their story, because it's good to hear the extension of a story behind the Instagram or the Facebook or the Vero or whatever other social media, to actually, we've made a connection here tonight, and to me, it's made a proper connection. And thank you for giving us your time this evening. It's been most enlightening.
And can I say one more thing? Thank you so much. Can I say one more thing? Like Paul always says in every Clickcast, will you come back?
Of course, yeah.
That'd be great.
I think it's a fantastic community. Yeah, I'd love to. And
if you're living, anytime you're in Edinburgh, do you actually stay in Edinburgh, do you?
No, I moved to Dunfermline recently. I was in Edinburgh, but I've moved up to Dunfermline.
Ah, well, I used to work in Dalgety Bay. I was going to say I could meet you for a coffee in town one day.
I could still do that. I come into Edinburgh often because that's where I work.
Oh, well, what to do anytime, or I mean, not just me, Gladys, or Paul, but if there's any time you're in about, because I'm free anytime, so I'd love to meet up for you and have a chat and a coffee somewhere.
That would be great.
I'm planning on going to the Isle of Arran in June, after we do our annual Isle of May visit. So that's the one thing that I'm organizing a group to go. So if you're interested, then me and Gladys goes to the Isle of May for bird photography, which includes basically indulging in fish and chips.
Sign me up.
Speedboat.
And also
oh my God.
And I also organize actually like trips to the Isle of Harris and all those kind of things. So we'll keep you in mind.
Definitely.
That would be great.
Very well. Thanks again. Thank you once again, Matthew.
Thank you so much, Matt, and good luck, and continue with what you're doing. And I'd really look forward to see how you grow as an artist.
I agree. I look forward to it as well.
Thank you, everyone. It's been amazing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye now.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.